Welcome to the Post Shift Podcast, your raw look at the hospitality industry, brought to you by SHC. This week's episode is proudly sponsored by Bar Green Ellington for all your restaurant and bar needs. Visit bargreen.com for the full portfolio. What is happening, Post Shifters? Welcome to another episode of the Post Shift Podcast. Of course, I'm your host, Shawn Soole. I am a little bit late for this episode, and I do apologize about that. This last couple of days has been a little bit hectic. Today, I want to talk about transparency and ownership and management. And ownership and management should go hand in hand, in my opinion. If you're hiring people to be your managers, to be your eyes and ears when you're not there, you should treat them in the same sort of way that you would if you had another owner. So, transparency can be called a lot of things. Honesty, forwardness. There's a whole bunch of things you can sort of lean into when it comes to transparency. But I do believe it's the fundamental element of staff ownership. Having your staff really feel like they own and are driving for the same goal as you as an owner or a manager. I do believe that really can come from transparency, and I think it's a fundamental element on building that sort of trust and drive and need for staff to really take ownership on a place, which is what we're always chasing as managers and owners. We want our staff to feel about the place the same way. And they're never going to feel the exact same way because they don't have technical, tangible ownership on a venue. But having your staff align with your goals, align with your true meaning, your mission statement and mantra, and push forward is really, really fundamental. So number one for transparency is staff ownership, giving that staff exactly what it is. How do we do that? Number two, sales figures. So I've worked in venues as a manager and as a staff member where you just never know if the venue is doing well or not. And I think for good or bad, making sure your staff understand how they're doing and having some KPIs that they really, really can relate to is super important. So per head spend is one of my big fundamentals. Like, what was our per head spend last night? What was it compared to my goals? Are my goals too high, too lofty for per head spend, or have I really looked at my budgets and pulled myself out from that? Cover count is another one. How many covers did we do? How many bodies do we have in the room? Cover count and per head spend, I personally believe, are the two numbers that can really drive your staff to take ownership on their space, take ownership on their services, and really push. Because if you give them goals, they 9 times out of 10 are going to strive for that. So we aim for a certain per head spend at Clive's and venues that I consult at. And so per head spend and covers are two things that are super easy to tell your staff. Same thing with your top line revenue and then your bottom line revenue, your end of day if you made money. You don't need to tell them specifics on this sort of stuff. You can just say, we had a great night, we had a bad night, or we made money or we didn't make money. If you tell them that you're in your red, 9 times out of 10, they're going to try and figure out and brainstorm with you how to get you out of that, how they can cut some costs somewhere. Simple things like staff never think about linen until you start telling them that linen costs are really high. So these are things that if you're transparent with your staff, I do believe that they can really, really drive your business for the better. Number three, weekly, monthly meets. Now, I sat down with a few people on a regular basis for consulting, and most of them do not meet with their managers as owners every week. And I think this is a super important thing because if you've built out KPIs and exactly how you want your business to run and how you want your business to be run by other people when you're not there, having a weekly meeting means that they know how much money they made the week before. They know what their costings were. They know the fundamentals of their P&L every week and really get down to it. Talk about complaints, talk about comps, talk about everything. And this is a weekly thing, hour and a half, 2 hours. If you have multiple venues, you really need to do it. But also, if you've got multiple venues, you should have it in place that every morning when you wake up, you have all the sales figures and everything in your inbox when you first wake up to go over and put out fires straight away. I used to do that for a couple of venues where I would get emails for sales in my inbox with a small report from my manager, and I'd wake up and I'd be like, okay, I can put out this fire now instead of waiting to my weekly meeting. So we should be doing weekly and monthly meetings. So 3 weekly meetings to sort of put out fires on a smaller micro basis, and then a macro meeting. Now the macro meeting once a month is for how did we fare compared to last year, and so on and so forth. So this transparency and conversation and this symbiotic relationship between you and your managers is something that is necessary to do on a weekly basis, because you don't know how to fix problems until you identify them and then walk them through with your staff. Number 4, as an owner and a manager, you're going to have bad days. It's the nature of the beast. We're human. We're not superhuman. This is something that I took a really long time to really formulate and understand, is that I don't always need to be the person who is stoic and straightforward. I have bad days, and you should be open to your staff about that too. Like, we're not inhuman, we're not superhumans, we're not superheroes. Showing that your staff that you are having a bad day instead of them feeling like you're having a bad day but not really wanting to talk to you about it, it honestly builds a symbiotic relationship that you need to have going forward when you have multiple venues, especially if you start really getting into a freaking multiple venues sort of thing. If you're having a bad day, instead of disappearing, have an honest conversation with your staff. You never know, your staff may be able to help you out with your bad day more than you think. And number 5, the last one, as a manager and owner, you are always in the wrong. It's always your fault. You, as an owner or a manager, you have hired the person that screwed up. You hired the dishwasher who didn't show up. You are the one that pushed the cleaning a little bit further and something's not as clean as you want it to be. If you take responsibility for everything in your venue and do not place the blame on anybody else, you suddenly become very liberated. And something that I'm very, very passionate about, being liberated owner and manager, is taking complete and utter responsibility for anything that goes wrong in your venue. And it's a hard thing to do because you say, well, I hired a manager to do this. Yes, you hired the manager. So if he does something, or he or she does something wrong, or he or she staff member does something wrong, then you are fully responsible for this. So if you take complete and utter responsibility for anything that is going wrong in your venue, it is very liberating. All of a sudden, you make sure that every move that you make as an owner is completely transparent. You don't have a stomach ulcer. You feel a little bit more at ease, and will make your life a lot easier. So thanks as always for the support, guys. Love you. As always, have a good week. Chat to you soon. Bye. Thanks for listening, Pose Shifters. Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode. I really enjoy sitting down with friends and peers and just chatting about the industry and getting down to the nuts and bolts of what's really going on out there. Make sure you like, subscribe, comment, everything on all the platforms. Just hit it up and I'll do my best to answer any queries or questions you have. I'll see you next week, guys. Bye.